Welcome back, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 190C. Now this is not a plane in the tech tree, it is in the German line, it's 5.0 and it's an old event vehicle that you can only get through the marketplace as of right now. And this thing you might say, well, it's a 190 with like some weird nozzles around it. What makes it so special? Well, it doesn't fly like a 190 whatsoever. The turn rate at medium to low speed is actually quite good. It locks up quite badly. It doesn't climb particularly fast, and it's actually pretty damn slow. So overall you're looking at basically the polar opposite of what you expect from a 190, other than the fact that the firepower is pretty decent. You have two 20mm in the wing roots and two 7.8 or whatever's almost 8mm in the nose cowling. And of course we have a pretty good roll rate, and that's where most of the similarities actually end. And the way we fly this is by having a bit of an altitude advantage, so that we can counteract the fact that we aren't that fast and we don't have the best climb rate. With altitude you can solve both of these issues, and because it actually turns quite okay at medium speed, this actually ends up working out quite well. Again, you're gonna be seeing a lot of head-ons today, and then me stalling people out that are flying on the deck. If you get caught off guard, if you have people diving on you, there's a very big likelihood that you are going to be clapped. Luckily, most of the people that you run into aren't too good at actually dogfighting, so you might end up winning most of these fights. When I say it turns quite well, I'm not saying that it turns like a Spitfire, I'm just saying that it turns, well, I'll show you in a minute here. We're gonna dive on the J2M, which is definitely the priority target here. The A6M doesn't really worry me. The J2M, very maneuverable, very good climb rate, and overall just an absolute pain in the ass to deal with. Now we dive on in with 600, we compress a little bit, and the second we go below 600, it starts turning quite well. You can tell that it just kind of whips around, especially with the flaps. But we do hemorrhage all of our speed away instantly. Luckily, this J2M5 was already going pretty slow, so that didn't really end up biting us in the ass. A6M5 Go, which is definitely severely over-tiered, but we have a lot of altitude on him. And he might stall later than us, and he might turn better than us, but again, without energy, no maneuverability. And he tries to pull in. If I was in a D9, for example, he would have been able to pull into that, and I wouldn't have been able to get the shot. But because we are in the 190C, I'm actually going to be able to get the nose on target, which is the main reason I'm making a video on this thing. I don't think it's super special to fly, but it's definitely unique. There's really nothing like it. The main thing that I want to compare it to is maybe like a 190A model, but you know, the A models actually have pretty good energy. This thing doesn't, so you know, it's a bit of a Frankenstein plane. I mean, it also looks like one, but the main reason, as I was saying, that I was making this video is just to kind of give you an idea on how it performs, because a lot of you guys probably don't have it. And most of the kills that I've been getting is just because people don't expect what they think is a Dora to whip around like it does. And here I'm trying to get away from the Focke-Wulf 190A8, it's the American one, and I'm trying to get a fight with the P47. Now luckily I have two teammates that are actually keeping their altitude, and the 190 is as well, so I'm gonna mark him. My teammates are actually complying, so I have a pretty good opportunity here to dogfight the P47. And it's the M version, which is definitely one of the better P47s in terms of dogfighting. But we actually turned quite decently, and we have a much better roll rate than his, so we are able to keep this scissor up quite easily. Now the main thing that I want to do here is get behind him as quick as possible, but I don't want to cut my throttle instantly, because then I might just turn myself into a sitting duck. We try to pull up under his nose, we go a little bit slower here, we deploy the flaps, we throttle down, we try to get slower, we roll into his turn here. He's going to take a bit of a shot, and because of that he's going to get out of position. Because of that we should now be able to start pulling into his shot right here. Just miss it. Now he's going to try to keep going vertical, because, well, if this is a 190 I am not going to have the ability to pull up into this. But you can tell with the flaps, this thing is actually pretty maneuverable, and he's going to end up floating directly into my guns. And you can tell here it's basically the polar opposite of what you try to do with a Dora. With a Dora you try to keep it super fast, reverse them that way. With this thing you actually try to get it as slow as possible so that they overshoot you. So you have to really switch it up, especially when you're fighting it. If the enemy is experienced, this thing might just surprise you. Now if you are experienced yourself and you know what to do and you know how to counter the fact that it has a lack of energy generation, has a lack of top speed, it's very easy to energy trap and just don't get roped in that super low speed fight. And if you do, very often you'll just be able to kind of spiral it. Don't try to reverse your turn too much, just kind of start raid fighting and then slowly but surely start climbing, especially if it's something like a Yak 3U, maybe an F4U, you know, a lot of those planes that just have a good power especially at low speeds. And if they turn quite well as well, you're gonna have a very easy time dogfighting this thing. Now, if you are flying something like a P-51D, for example, which is the same BR, just try to not get roped into that super low speed stuff. But the P-51 is just so much quicker than this thing that it really is no contest whatsoever. Now, if you miss that shot right there, you can tell that the Yak-3U, despite being on fire, still has some capabilities of pulling into this. Now, he's about to just start getting disassembled by the fire here. But I hope that it's pretty obvious that this plane is severely outclassed. And today I just want to show you some of the more fun dogfights, because in like a longer game, I don't think this thing really has major advantages other than the gimmick that it has. And I think that the gimmick is pretty fun to use, but for like full games, I don't think this is a particularly fantastic plane. Even though I did quite well in it, we got about 4 kills per game, almost every match, which is pretty decently high. But a lot of it is because of people like this, people that just don't dodge the head-on, people that just kind of want to die to you. And you notice this if you are flying at like 5.0 mainly. If you don't get fully up tiered, like 6.0 is kind of rough, but even then, most of your enemies are very regarded, and you are just gonna get a lot of free kills on them. P-51 comes in, it's a D, not sure if it's a D30, it is, so we try to get this guy slow. We want to abuse the fact that he has very bad retention at low speed, and we want to abuse the fact that he actually just doesn't have much engine power below like 300. Don't make the mistake, don't get roped into that super low fight. And I rip my flap off instantly. Basically instantly ruins this fight, but because of the position that I have, I'm gonna be able to run away for a little bit, and I need to reset, because if I had continued that fight, he probably would have just hosed me down. So we break off, we reset the fight, we basically merge the exact same way, but this time I'm gonna throttle down just a little bit, because I don't have the flaps to slow me down and to provide some turn rate. We throttle back up after we have regained enough position. We miss a very easy shot. But at this point, I have the position here, and I'm going to have a very easy time trying to kill this guy. Now, if he just runs away there, or if he tries to just keep his energy and climb away from me, there's very little I can do. Luckily, most of them just try to commit the dogfight, and then they get clapped like the mister in the P-51 right there. Next up is going to be the N1K. Now, the N1K is pretty maneuverable, especially at low speed. That thing is pretty dangerous, but it still handles like a plane. And the N1K actually does compress quite a bit. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to try to get a shot in here, but he does the correct thing. He keeps turning into the same direction. He's gaining a lot of position on me, so I'm actually going to try to go for a little bit of a lead turn, but I just miss it. And now I'm forced to just break off. We have to get out of here, because if I stick that fight, I will lose. Here it's actually reversed, and I can somewhat fly like a Dora, other than the fact that he will actually catch me in a straight line. So I do need to try and reverse him. I don't want to go too fast. I want to sit at about 600 and not much over it, because then I do start compressing. So we are going to try to get him a little bit closer. I want him in that little bit of a thicker air area at lower altitudes. P-59 comes in, he starts shooting, he dodges. And now I have the ability to break off for a second. And I did at this point, I thought, well, I'm just going to ignore the N1K. And I'm going to let the P-59 just kind of bait him, basically. Now, that's great, because the J5N is flying to the opposite direction. But then they start coming in, and I just think, well, balls in. We have to do something, because there's also an I-225 coming in. So we go up over his nose. He's actually compressing now. We made him dive on us, as he was already going pretty quick. We throttle down a little bit, we use the flaps, and just like that, we send him back to the hangar. J5N is, luckily for us, chasing the P-59, but behind us is also an I-225, and the I-225 is extremely dangerous in this thing. Luckily, he flew the other way. Now, the I-225 is kind of harmless in a way, because it compresses very badly. It's a plane that is, of course, very, very good at like low speed. It can hang with a lot of planes in a dogfight. It's pretty fast, it climbs very well, but it's kind of like the P-38K, where it locks up at like 450 to 500, and it's very hard to actually kill people with it, which is the main downside. But if he plays it slow, there's just very little that I can do about him, because he just has so much performance, and because I am so slow, he doesn't have to worry too much about compressing. Luckily, in the team fight, he's kind of forced to stay fast and play it outside of his window. Gets a little bit greedy, he goes vertical with the P-59, so we are gonna turn around and just kind of lick him up. The 225 is one of my favorite planes, and need to cover that thing again. It is absolutely fantastic, but it doesn't really fit RRB, but it just has a lot of potential, you know. It's a plane that can get very satisfying kills, it has very satisfying fights, but in most of the games you just kind of are out of place in the arrow beam meta, because it's all about getting kills quickly, and that is the main thing that plane is kind of bad at, unless everyone stalls themselves out directly below you. Now here we have a Spitfire, and this is probably one of the worst fights that I've ever had in this game, especially in the last year. He goes head on, we try to just kill him in the head on here, but we kind of miss our shots. And it's an LF, so we just kind of die, but I thought, well, let's just send it, let's dive away and try to reverse him. And what does he do? Instead of trying to chase me when he clearly is going to kill me, well, not clearly, he might not know what the 190C is, the second he breaks off, I just turn back in. And just like that, I can say I won versus the LF, but that guy just, I don't know if he was playing Subway servers on the second monitor, but I'm not entirely sure what his battle plan was right there. And here for the more average game, this is what you can expect for most of your matches, where people are slightly above you, or maybe co-eld. And everyone is kind of just gonna be baited by my squad mate. Now Razor is in the Heinkel 100, don't question him, he's gonna cook regardless. And we kill the Tempest right here, because I don't want him to come back in a little bit later. Now you can say the Yak-3U is a better priority, but I can't kill him right now, so I'd rather just kill the Tempest while I can, and then turn back in as Razor is dogfighting the Spitfire together with the P-51. Now the P-51 is not really a major threat right here. The Heinkel 100 is decently maneuverable, but the Spitfire is going to be much easier to pilot in this scenario. So when I can, I will go for the Spitfire instead of the P-51 to make sure that Razor actually survives the engagement. Lining up on the P-51, but I notice that the Spitfire becomes an easier target, so I switch on over to him, make sure that he dies right here, and after we kill him we can make sure to go for the P-51.